Good morning, everyone, and it is a very warm welcome to this important session on advancing cybersecurity and cyber diplomacy in Africa. In commemoration of the International Cybersecurity Awareness Month, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is delighted to partner with the Global Network for Cyber Solutions to bring you this timely conversation. It is wonderful to see so many colleagues and friends here today. Your presence reflects the growing recognition that cybersecurity and digital policies or digital diplomacy are no longer a separate conversations, but two sides of the same coin for shaping Africa's digital future. As you know, the global digital landscape is evolving at a remarkable pace. At the United Nations, countries are working together to make the cyberspace open, safe, and more inclusive. We have witnessed also major development from the group of governmental expert group, which first defined the norms. Now we have also the open-ended working group, which concluded its mandate this year and set the stage for the global mechanism on cybersecurity, which is a permanent platform for cooperation, capacity building, interest among nations. We also have the adoption of the United Nations Cybercrime Convention, which is a huge milestone achieved last year to strengthen international collaboration against cyber threats, while also safeguarding human rights online. But the conversation goes beyond cybersecurity or security in general, looking at the Global Digital Compact adopted during the Summit of the Future in September 2024, and also the ongoing WISES Plus 20 review, widening the focus from security to connectivity, inclusion, and trust into one shared global digital vision. Together, so this process to bridge the gap between the policy, the diplomacy, and the technical community, ensuring that the region like Africa play an active role in influencing and shaping the global digital agenda. If we come back to Africa, to our region, also we have a few frameworks like the African Union Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity in Personal Data Protection. Also now we have the EU Digital Policy framework that lay a strong foundation for regional cooperation in the digital governance, but yet the implementation remains to be very uneven. So today's conversation is beyond moving from dialogue to delivery. It is about asking how come Africa moved from being a pure participant in this global discourse to becoming a co-creator of digital norms and framework that will define our shared future. In that note, I will invite our partner, the Global Network on Cyber Solution, to give us his opening remark, Dr. Segu. Then we will start our conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sorina. Please, can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Please, can you hear me? Just to confirm that I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. And good morning from Nigeria. In Nigeria, we say Ekaro. Good morning. We appreciate you being with us since yesterday. I really want to appreciate our partner, UNECA, for giving us the opportunity to facilitate these important interventions. And let me just quickly take you back that yesterday we had a very wonderful session, and the section actually focused on the global policy and regional compliance, aligning and strengthening cybersecurity. We have looked at analyzing the implications of the new UN conventions on cybercrime and the WISES 20+ framework. We're able to, glance through it, and we discuss extensively on that. And we also looked at the emerging technology, resilience, and the future workforce. And we appreciated the fact that all our speakers did a very good justice to the subject matter. But this morning, we're going to look at the geopolitics of data and the digital sovereignty and cyber diplomacy. And it is important for us to deep dive into digital sovereignty challenges, data governance, and the protection of the digital public infrastructures. We're going to look at how we can integrate these discussions from African perspectives, especially coming from the outcome of the IGF 2024. And it is expected that at the end of these sessions, we should be able to have input that will help us to define a practical reality on cyber diplomacy mechanism that can be adopted for regional cybersecurity corporations, including effective computer emergency response team and norms of behaviors. So let me once again appreciate you for being part of us. I want to appreciate the moderator, Serena, who will be taking us soon. Also would like to appreciate Mr. Akim Ayujola, who will be the keynote speakers. Let me also appreciate Honorable Aji Mbo from I think from Gambia, and Dr. Vincent Olatunji, who should be represented by his official very soon. And let me also extend our greetings and appreciation to Ms. Cynthia Lesufi from South Africa. We hope to gain an insight from you, and I thank you for being part of us. Sorry, Ned.
Okay, thank you, Segun. I truly appreciate for recapping yesterday's discussion and now leading us today's discussion, merging cybersecurity and cyber diplomacy, specifically from Africa's perspective. I think there is a bit delay with our keynote speaker, Dr. Abdul Hakim Ajijola, but without delay, I want to take us to our first speaker, Ms. Cynthia Lucifi. She's the chair of the ITU Council Working Group on Wizards and SDG. She wants us to take us to back where it started, digital diplomacy before cyber diplomacy becoming very popular. So building on the foundation that has been set, now we are turning to global policy and development perspective, where diplomacy and trust and digital cooperation truly intersect. So inviting Ms. Cynthia, I would like to ask her a question. You say, how come Wizards shape today's cyber diplomacy agenda, taking us back from 1998? How does Wizards framework, that means the Wizards process, linking access, trust, and security, specifically if we go back to the action line C5, building confidence in security in ICT, how do you see it evolving to becoming the UN level cyber norm discussion and implementation? So Ms. Cynthia, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serena, and good morning to everyone joining us. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank UNECA for inviting me to be part of this important conversation. Perhaps in answering your question, let me start by setting the tone with the African wisdom, which says that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. For me, this proverb captures the spirit of WESIS and the modern cyber diplomacy. In terms of how WESIS is capturing this, it is touching on collaboration, trust, and shared progress. Like many African proverbs, it reminds us that sustainable digital transformation comes from collective effort, not competition. And now moving to WESIS and the foundation of cyber diplomacy. As you've said yourself, Serena, when you were introducing me, and the question that you have said is that WESIS really has established the global architecture for digital cooperation 2 decades ago. And in the WESIS framework, we'll also have the WESIS Action 9C5, building confidence and security in the use of ICTs. And this is actually connected, it has connected 3, what I would call timeless priorities, which is access, trust and security. And to date, this framework still defines the modern cyber diplomacy, linking development and digital stability as two sides of the same coin. And in the main, what does this mean? It means that WSIS managed to transform cybersecurity from purely being a technical issue into a diplomatic language of confidence and cooperation. And and you yourself, Sorina, you have also touched on the recently adopted Global Digital Compact. And with that, I feel that it is also important for us to then show the linkage of how the action line C5 is a living legacy in the Digital Compact itself. And I think you have also said it, and I think I would believe that the colleagues who are joining us here today, they know that this is part of the Global Digital Compact is part of the UN Secretary General's Our Common Agenda. From where I'm sitting, this GDC actually reflects the same cooperative logic, which was first introduced by the WSIS framework, in particular through the WSIS Action Line C5, which calls for trust, safety, accountability, and equitable access. And this has actually become the backbone of the GDC vision for a fair digital future. And the GDC, from where I'm sitting, I want to call it the next chapter of WSIS. And why I'm saying this, because it managed to update the principle of the original architecture of the diplomatic language of confidence, to then bring to forth the principles of the modern age issues. It managed to bring forth the AI, the digital platform, and most importantly, the issue of the global data flows. And again, when you look at it, it is more like it's beginning to reaffirm that digital cooperation must rest on shared norms of responsible behavior, transparency, and capacity building, which is, in truly speaking, in essence, the WSIS C5 action line. And if one has to then conclude in the issue of the Global Digital Compact, it is quite clear that when you look at it, the action line C5 logic has managed to shape the modern cyber diplomacy. Because, as I've said, it is embedded in the Global Digital Compact and ensuring that trust and security remain at the heart of inclusive digital cooperation. And Sorina, in your introduction, again, you spoke to the harmonization of cybersecurity frameworks. And I think with this, I will then focus on what is it that Africa has done. And you have sort of touched on that, a little bit in your introduction. From where I'm sitting, I believe that Africa, as a continent, we have become a model of regional cyber cooperation. We truly managed to translate the WSIS Action Line C5 principles into what I believe is execution in action, continental execution in action. If you look at the African Union's Digital Transformation Strategy 2020 to 2030 and the Malabo Convention, these are two pieces of policy that provides, or that one can look as the backbone for cyber resilience, data protection, and digital trust. But in addition to that, we do have the regional economic communities, such as ECOWAS, SADC, EAC, COMESA, and so forth, These are the leading, they are actually leading us as a continent in an effort to harmonize cybersecurity frameworks and ensuring that national laws, our strategies, and response mechanisms are interoperable. But all of these, they are leading to or beginning to demonstrate the harmonization strength of cross-border collaboration, information sharing, and collective resilience while amplifying the Africa's voice in a global forum. And that's not the only thing. The other thing that is, very clear of what Africa is doing is the Africa CSAT, and which is now another layer which is adding on this harmonization framework across the continent, and also the Smart Africa ANCA, and lastly the Africa Hub GFCE. And all of these processes, when you look at them, they embodies the spirit of Action 9C5 of confidence through cooperation. And the other aspect that is also, it's quite evident in looking at this important topic, it's how Africa, together with the entire global South, it's beginning to play itself in the modern cyber diplomacy. Africa and the broader global South, really, from where I'm sitting, they are bridging the development and security priorities within the UN system. And this is evident through the Open Expert Working Group, the G20 Economic Group, Economy Working Group. And Sorina, you've also referred to the Cybercrime Convention negotiation. And the recent acceptance of the AU into the G20, from where I'm sitting, it has actually amplified the voice of Africa. It has amplified the voice of Africa in a sense that South Africa was just a voice that is representing Africa. However, the bringing in of the African Union, it is sort of beginning to show the leading role that Africa is playing for linking the global South perspective with the global policy debates, advocating for an example, for issues such as your capacity building, fairness, and the rights-based digital governance. And with this, the global South message, it has become clear. Security enables access, and access sustains security. They are mutually reinforcing goals in as far as the issue of modern cyber diplomacy is concerned. And lastly, Sorina, you have touched on WSIS plus 20, looking ahead. What is the next phase of cyber cooperation? And really, for me, as we approach the WSIS plus 20, or rather, as we are now in 2025, where we're talking about this, we know that in a few weeks to come, the world will be renewing its commitment to digital cooperation grounded in access, trust, and security. And what does this really mean for Africa? From where I'm sitting, it means that strengthening continental harmonization, championing cyber capacity and cyber capacity building is a global norm under the GVC, and aligning cybersecurity, sustainability, inclusive development to really look at issues, sustainable development goals. It's a goal that we need to aim for as Africa, and with this, Sorina, I think I will just leave it for give you back the floor, as I think I've managed to answer your question. Thank you.
Hi, Cynthia. I think you answered it beyond of my expectation. I think you gave us a very good background to how to start our discussion. I like the idea you connected WSIS to Global Digital Compact and also other process like G20. And for the question of like, what did we get from WSIS today to have cyber diplomacy or diplomatic negotiation. From WISES, we got the multi-stakeholderism, collaboration, trust, and shared progress was the key word that came out of WISES, which is still relevant after 20 years today. But also, I really love the idea that you brought from institutionalization of those kind of capacities. For example, you identify how the African Union having a seat in G20, making the Africa voice being amplified in this kind of multilateral processes. In institutions like our RICS, Smart Africa or AUC or ECA are playing pivotal role in this that he gave us. So we will have you also for the second round of questions. And from our participant, maybe they will have questions of in terms of fragmentation of all this ongoing process. Be it with this GDC, we will be having the G20, the open-ended working group, or any of the process. How does Africa manage to cope through all these kind of processes while we have a limited capacity? So maybe that is the question that I throw back to you so you can think about it. The next speaker that we have is Dr. Abdul Hakim Ajijola. He is a security space, not only from technical perspective, but all this cyber diplomacy discourse that has been going on. Also, he can give us more of a history background, where we started, what was our milestone, and finally, how do we look forward beyond 2025? As I concluded, the open-ended working group concluded its mandate this year in July to have a permanent mechanism for cyber diplomacy and cyber diplomacy for trust between the nation, capacity building, and for the implementation of the norms. So I would like us to give Abdul Hakim just to give us a rundown. So for our own follower speakers, we'll have something to jumpstart. So Abdul Hakim, building upon Cynthia's, please have the rundown of where we were,
Thank you.
what we have achieved.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me apologize for the tardiness of being late. I mistook the times. So again, my sincere apologies to the audience. I think because of my bandwidth challenges, I might have to switch off my video, but we'll see what we can do. I was trying to share my screen, but I can't see the instruction for it. So maybe it's just better let me get on with it because we're already quite behind. So permit me to get on with it. So good day,
Yes.
distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Sorin. And I thank the previous speaker for actually establishing, some of the underlying thoughts and the connection between WSIS. It's a privilege to share this space with those who believe that Africa is not something to be predicted as such, it is something to be protected and built. The theme of today, the geopolitics of data, may sound technical, even distant, but let me simplify it. Data is the new soil, not oil, soil from which power grows. Whoever controls the data controls the direction of our economies, our narratives, and even our choices. So let's consider this. Social media is like fire. It can cook your food. It can also burn your house. And unfortunately, as we've seen, it can also burn your nation. Many young people are using social media very wisely, building businesses, shaping ideas, yet others are being misled by misinformation and fake lifestyles. And to that end, as a society, we must teach our people to use social media and not be used by it. This is why today's conversation matters. Because guarding our continent's security is no longer only about defending territory. It's about protecting truth, trust, and the fragile bridge between citizens and those who serve them. And I believe together, those of us here, we can make that bridge much stronger. And again, like the previous speaker said, if you want to go far, you need to go together. And this is one of those marathon journeys. And just like soil, not oil, data can either nourish or be exploited, depending on who owns the land and who writes the title deeds. So again, data is the new soil. Whoever controls it controls the harvest. We often also talk about data being the new oil, but remember, oil runs out as some countries are beginning to find. But data in of itself multiplies. Every digital transaction, every online search, every satellite image adds another layer to the global contest for influence. Today, data flows are not just technical, they are territorial. They define digital borders, invisible to the eye, but powerful enough to influence elections, markets, and more importantly, minds. If we look around, over 9 of the world's top 10 tech firms are headquartered outside Africa. Unfortunately, also, at about 80% of our internet is routed through servers in Europe and North America before us. It's much like when I was young. My grandfather used to have a cocoa farm, and we would export the cocoa, but buy the chocolates back overseas. So even many African government websites are fraud. In this reality, our sovereignty is only as strong, unfortunately. Digital sovereignty is not isolationism. It is self-determination in digital age. It means the ability to make decisions about how our data is collected, stored, used, and shared. Indeed, it should be guided by our values, not someone else's algorithms. Its core, digital sovereignty is the practical ability of African institutions to set, enforce, and audit rules for platforms and in line with public interest, that is the African public interest, while remaining interoperable across borders. Continental instruments, as already been mentioned, do sketch a path. We have the AU Data Policy Framework, the African Digital Compact, which actually was developed before the UN Digital Compact and was a feeder into the UN Digital Compact. The emerging African Union artificial intelligence work and documents that have been coming out, instruments, and the continental cybersecurity strategy that is in progress, being developed, all emphasize lawful, rights-respecting use of data, cross-border coherence, and public digital goods. It is also about designing systems that reflect our realities. If Africa is to leapfrog, it must first own the leap. Imagine an Africa where, again, for the sake of imagination, our biometric databases are hosted on continental clouds under African and our nation's legal jurisdictions. Our young developers create open source security tools that compete globally. I think this is something that we can see very easily. Our universities, maybe they could be teaching digital diplomacy alongside political science. And our citizens trust that their data serves them, not spies, not scammers, and indeed not empires. That, colleagues, is what sovereignty looks like in the cyber age. Cyber diplomacy is the art of negotiating peace, trust, and cooperation in the digital realm. It's about the behavior of nation states in cyberspace. It is about ensuring that Africa has a seat, a say, a strategy in global cyber governance forums, not just a name on an attendance list. As was also mentioned by my erstwhile previous speaker, at the UN's open-ended working group, only a handful of African voices were shaping the norms that will govern cyberspace for decades. This must change. If you are not at the table, and please understand this, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. We've seen from the treaty, of Berlin in 1884, how Africa was carved up by the then colonial rulers. We do not want to be carved up again digitally. African diplomats must recognize that cyber negotiations are not about cables and code. They're about commerce, credibility, and control. To succeed, They must combine technical literacy with strategic ability. So to this end, my firm, CS2, recently facilitated the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in hosting the inaugural seminar on anticipatory cyber and digital diplomacy. During that event, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs launched a free online cyber diplomacy masterclass on YouTube under the Anticipatory Cyber Digital Diplomacy platform, offering practical insights for global leaders shaping diplomacy in the digital age. Unfortunately, my screen is not up, but I will read out the link. It's https www.youtube.com, then it's /@ anticipatory cyber digital diplo, all one word. I hope you got that. At anticipatory cyber digital diplo. That's the actual YouTube channel. So this initiative aims to equip African and global South diplomats with the knowledge to navigate the opportunities and risks of our digital era. Interestingly, while we received strong support from non-African experts, many of our own colleagues in the continent were hesitant. In some cases, some sought payment first for a service we were offering freely to strengthen our collective capacity. So I think there's something to think about here. I invite all of you to watch the videos and learn. To our cyber diplomats, please contact me to make a video contribution if you are so inclined. So let us imagine if African nations coordinated their positions before every major UN cyber meeting, just as OPEC coordinates oil. We could define responsible state behavior from our own perspective, protecting human dignity, promoting economic inclusion, and preventing cyber colonialism. This is something I think we need to really focus on and get done. We must focus on turning declarations into implementation, a continental path to digital control, security, and prosperity. And I look forward to those situations where not just myself, but all of us can be saying, not simply well done, but also moving on from well said to saying well done. Because I think we are able to say these things quite well. It's now the doing. Why all this matters? Control over our data and platforms and networks now defines our resilience and dignity. The Africa Internet Governance Forum in 2024 made it clear the time for action is now. Arising from that forum are my own following observations. First of all, we need to anchor data in Africa, build continental and regional data centers governed by African law, powered by renewables, secure fiber and satellite networks. We need to accelerate the African Union digital cloud as a cornerstone for trusted storage and processing. Number two, we need to align our laws and institutions, harmonize our national laws with the AU Data Policy Framework and the Malabo Convention. Of course, we need some kind of resource-independent data protection authorities and data stewardship office, entities. And again, we've seen some of these coming up, particularly in places like Nigeria and Kenya that are able to self-generate their own income. As was also mentioned by the previous speaker, we need to empower our regional economic communities to coordinate cross-border data advocacy and mutual audit recognition. Number three, we need to embed cybersecurity into diplomacy. We must ensure that every embassy and every foreign ministry has cyber-aware officers. We must train to manage risk from disinformation, ransomware, and digital espionage. We must use diplomacy to advance cyber peace, capacity exchange, and norms of responsible state behavior. Number four, we must strengthen our regional defenses. We must deepen cooperation between national and regional CERTs, especially places like ECOWAS and SADC and EAC that are a bit further ahead. We must move simply from sharing alerts to coordinated responses and joint drills, because cyber threats, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, ignore borders. To that end, we must establish some kind of Pan-African non-aggression principles, protecting hospitals, schools, elections, and citizens' data. And number five, lastly, we invest in people and partnerships. We need at least 10,000 skilled African professionals trained and certified and deployed to build a cybersecurity economic subsector. We must fund data governance fellowships and DPI security certifications. We must include youth, small and medium-scale enterprises, and gender diversity for legitimacy. We must embed the sovereignty in all, and indeed, we must evolve some kind of sustaining cybersecurity economic subsector that generates dignified jobs for our youth, generates wealth for African entrepreneurs, and as a byproduct, produces taxes for African governments while reducing the flight of human capital. Africa's digital sovereignty will not be gifted to us. It must be built through laws that protect, infrastructure that empowers, and diplomacy that defends, and people who sustain it. And again, I think that notion of if you want to go far, go together rings very true here. We must shift our focus from dependency to resilience and accountability. What counts as DPI? Things like digital ID, payments, data exchange. These are the rails of inclusion and service delivery. They must be trusted, resilient, and rights anchored. So our solution paths. A young man the other day made a quote that I cannot help bear with me. According to Opeyemi Onifade, a bush is simply an ungoverned garden. A garden is a governed bush. So bush or garden, the difference is governance. And I think we need to take that to heart. To do this, we must designate a national DPI owner with statutory duties. We must publish a DPI rulebook on purpose limitation, redress, and transparency. Number two, we have to develop the architecture and assurance. We must enforce open, royalty-free standards for identity, credentials, and APIs. We must build in quantum-resistant cryptographic verifiability and offline fallbacks for continuity. We must require independent security testing plus quarterly public audit summaries. Number three, we must evolve some kind of resilient and regional continuity. We must classify DPI as critical information infrastructure with redundancy and joint CISA drills. We must share regional trust lists and crisis protocols under the regional economic, as has been said in passing by the previous speaker. Financing inclusion, number four, is a big one. We must adopt a public core, private edge models. I mean, not the only models, but those kind of models, so that states own the rule books, but certified firms deliver. We must apply outcome-based procurement, pay for uptime, security, and inclusion metrics. And number five, some of the issues that come post AF-IGF 2024 and the related actions. We must establish DPI security and assurance boards. We must pilot cross-border data projects, for example, health referrals and SME finance. And we must publish sovereign procurement playbooks. Africa's path to digital sovereignty lies in cooperative rights anchored and verifiable governance, protecting our data, our dignity, our future. And again, knowledge is like a garden. If it is not cultivated, it cannot be harvested. The next frontier is not just about defending networks, but defining narratives. African cyber diplomacy must protect our values. The value of Ubuntu comes to mind here. It must protect our community, and certainly it will stability. We must position ourselves so that Africa is a victim of space, but it becomes a vanguard of digital inclusion. Africa must not be a battlefield of great power competition. It should be a laboratory for cooperation. And Africa's cybersecurity will not be imported. It must be inspired. The world needs Africa's perspective. It needs our ethical, community-driven, and humane ways of looking at the world. So let me leave you with an African proverb. Until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. For too long, others have written our digital story. It's time for African lions, our thinkers, our coders, our diplomats, people like you to write the next chapter, because Data is not destiny. It is a raw material. What we build from it, trust, prosperity, or vulnerability, is entirely up to us. In closing, we must move Africa's digital sovereignty from connectivity to conscious control. Because the truth is, the future cannot wait, and neither should our efforts to secure it. Our society, especially our youth, guided by the audience, must learn to use these platforms like social media, AI, and other emerging platforms, and not be used by them. Africa must act together to shape and secure our digital destiny. The battle for truth, for continental and national resilience will not be won through isolation, but through collaboration. And again, I think Ubuntu encompasses that. And this is cooperation and collaboration between all segments and stakeholders, multi-stakeholderism, and especially between the platforms and the people. So let us rise and protect what is ours, our data, our dignity, our shared future. As we say in my hometown, Woyayi, Kario, what is yours, protect it with pride and courage. May the Almighty bless and guide you all, and bless our beloved continent, Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdul Hakim Ajijola. I think I can't even summarize it. So many quotes, so many wisdom. You have touched so many of the elements from data to technical expertism to Pan-African and aggression norms, all the way to how do we build capacity at the institution level, also touching upon the critical issue of finances. So as I said, it is between the bush and the garden. It's all about governance. So cyber diplomacy is defining those governance norms. Because Dr. Catherine will be escaping us very soon, and I wanna get her scoop. Dr. Catherine is known, very well known in the African space. She is well known as an ICT elder. She's been working for the Kenyan ICT Secretary, later as a CEO of ICT currently working at Diplo Found, but I want to build upon what aggression norms. Let's go back, and maybe I want to get to her take during her involvement into the group of governmental experts, the GGE, later in the open-ended working groups. During norm negotiation, I want to get her takes. Were there any specific norms that were suggested by the African group or an African country that reflected the Pan-African aspiration? Was there a coordination or the capacity or a political will was there? If not, what was the most challenging in co-creating norms for the Africans who are present during the negotiation? So I would like to give the floor to Catherine, just to give her take. What was Africa's challenge in the norm negotiation? If there any unique norm that was proposed by our continent as a group or individual countries, and what did we learn from that process? So Dr. Catherine, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's such a pleasure and a privilege, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I have been so inspired by the presentations of Cynthia Lesufi and my friend Ajijola from Nigeria. And thank you. We know you're really in charge and you're representing us at the table. Now, I'd like to answer your question specifically about the norms. I would say that we were really at inception. There were very few African countries represented. Kenya, of course, I was representing. There was Egypt, there was Senegal at one point, and later on South Africa. And I think Ghana was also there for a short period. So we were very few. At that time, we had very little understanding of the issues. You know, Africa is always invited to the table, but sometimes we are not the agenda setters. We're just the agenda joiners, And we spend some time just trying to understand what's going on, how it could be important in our particular area, and what we need to do to ably represent our continent. I think the only norm maybe which we can take credit for is the second one on being very careful in the area of attribution and making sure that we look at all factors, because of course attribution can lead to war. If I point at another country and say, you are the one who has attacked me, that is the beginning point of conflict. Yet we know that in the cyber realm, this is quite a challenging thing to do. There are technical elements, but there are also interpretive elements which come from other political tensions and sources of information. So we can take credit from that one. I would also say we didn't really have tension about any of the 11 norms. There is one norm that people say, well, are we saying that people should go to war over cyber issues? But I think that was not the intention. It was a realistic norm to say that, yes, if people are in conflict, they need to observe the normal restrictions and restraints that prevent a war from becoming a damaging and destructive battlefield as we are seeing around the world at this moment. In the area of cyber war, because we are beginning to see that happening around the world, but also in conventional warfare. Now, I'll just rush through because I'm sorry, I'm in a very small town, about 80 kilometers outside Nairobi. And I'm very proud that I have no other device right now except my phone. And I'm using it for everything. I'm able to get internet, I'm able to communicate. And this really is an example of the power of this technology here in Africa and what has been achieved. Now, we've achieved a lot. I think both Dr. Ajijola and Ms. Lesufi have already told us. Of course, we have the Malabo Convention. We have contributed to nearly every convention that has taken place, whether in the area of cybercrime or also cyber diplomacy. We also have a huge digital economy. I'm told it's now contributing 7.3% of GDP in sub-Saharan Africa as from 2023. And that's really very impressive. It's a massive change. We added, I won't say how many we are, but we've added 160 million broadband users from 2019 to the global internet users, and that is bigger than the size of any but 3 countries. Only China, India, and the United States have populations above this number. So you can see how we're growing. We are hitting almost 1.5 trillion in digital payments economy. So Africa is huge. We're not a small player in this field. But of course, it means that we are substantially exposed in the cyber realm. 7.3% of GDP is not small. More than $1 trillion in digital payments is not small. So we're hugely exposed, and therefore there's some important things we need to do. And I'll just rush through those, Serene. I know you didn't ask me the question, but I'll behave like a politician and just say what I want to say, regardless of what I'm asked to say, although I do hope I have addressed your question. So I think there are 3 important things we must take seriously as we negotiate in this cyber diplomatic field going forward. One is that we must balance safety with growth. We cannot allow the formation of international rules or policies that prevent us from growing. Even though we have really advanced, poverty is still a problem. Lack of opportunity is still a problem. And we desperately need to take hold of our resources and grow. So as we listen to the emerging policy going forward, please let us say, yes, we need to be safe and secure, but don't put in any policy that is going to slow down or prevent Africa's growth. Everyone has talked about collaboration, so I don't need to belabor the point about practical cooperation in cyber diplomacy as in all other fields. Then there's the issue of local value capture. We are the youngest continent. 70% of our people are below 35, and that means we are the continent of the future, and that the consumer of the future is an African. The worker of the future is an African. And this needs to be taken very seriously. So the matter of the skills that we are developing, the infrastructure that we are developing, and the data that we are capturing for ourselves and for the world ecosystem is critical for the future, not only of Africa, but of the world, because we are the young population that will be the people of the future. Let us make sure that the rights of the youth, we've seen the Gen Z spring growing around Africa and around the world. Let us take seriously the things that they hold dear to their hearts and their rights, and make sure that those are protected. Let us make sure that any mandate that is created globally is one that can be funded and supported, so that no burden is placed on us that makes things more challenging than they already are as we seize the future. And I'll just mention one more because I'm looking at the time, and say that the extraction of data from Africa must stop or must be properly compensated. Yesterday, I was in a forum where one of the big global cyber companies was sharing how much data capture they're doing in Africa. They didn't have time for questions, but I got hold of the speaker afterwards and I said to him, yes, it's nice that you're capturing all this unique data from Africa. However, who does it belong to? And he smiled and he said, it belongs to me or to this company. How can this be? Every Africa must fight to own our own data. Ajijola has said that this is the new soil. How can we ship our soil out of our continent? Where will we get our food? Where will we get our future if our data has gone and belongs to other people? We must not be too lazy and just say, oh, if you have the technology, come and capture data here, and it becomes part of the archive of other countries. So I'll stop there, Serene. Sorry for talking for so long, but I've really enjoyed being here and it's been a privilege. I'm sorry I have to log out in about 3 minutes, but thank you so much.
Okay, Catherine, before you log out, I just want to, by the way, I always love listening to your experiences. It has been a privilege to hear all the speakers from Cynthia to Abdul Hakim and you, Catherine. I just want to ask one question, because from the 3 points in the cyber policy negotiation, you said balance between safety and growth, practical collaboration, local value capture, and also making sure that our data needs to be compensated properly. Through your capacity building experience, because Africa always put forward is technical support and capacity building. And there has been so many different kind of training which you are also be involved. There is a specific skill or institutional mechanism is missing to ensure that our cyber diplomacy posture is in the right place. If you can just share the training model or the capacity building program that you think is fitted to our region. I just want to take your experience in that cyber capacity building experience. So if you can just conclude that before you let us go, then
Okay, thank you for that question, Soreen. Yes, Diplo, UNIDIA, so many other bodies are training, and we really appreciate their efforts. And of course, GFCE, also the African Union. That collaboration and cooperation and effort is fantastic. And every country represented here, either as a panelist or a participant, please take hold of every opportunity to be trained. However, as Africa, just quick comment, we have to move beyond face-to-face. It's expensive, it's slow. Let us learn from the youth. Let us go online, develop YouTube videos, and thank you. I think Ajijola has just shared another platform where there is information. We have to use AI to train ourselves. Why not ask AI proper prompts, which are saying, I want to learn about this, tell me about this, etc. When we use, let us use every means, and our youth are very good at it. So let us expose them to this area of cyber diplomacy and global cyber negotiation, and they will train themselves. You know, we have an athlete in Kenya who actually won gold medals, and he trained himself entirely using YouTube videos. So it's extraordinary what our youth can do when you expose them to something. So I'm sure the others have something to say, so I'll stop there. But let us continue that conversation about how to speed up capacity building. Do I have permission to leave?
yes, thank you so much. Travel safe, and we always appreciate your inputs. We will have this conversation in the next webinar too, so you are more than welcome to expand on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Us.
much. Have a wonderful meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think Cynthia started a collaboration. If we want to go far, we need to come together. Ajijola had so many quotes. One of the quotes is data is no longer the oil, but the soil. So we will take us to the next speaker. As we look back to the United Nations 11 volunteer norm on a responsible state behavior, data governance wasn't explicitly mentioned per se, but it was implicitly there. From Norm 13C to Norm 13G, Norm 13K, and Norm 13J, based on my research. Together, the norm implied data protection is woven in the broader principle of human rights, sovereignty, and critical infrastructure protection. Even if it's not codified as a standalone global norms. But Africa, as we said, we have data protection policy. Even the Malabo Convention made sure that cybersecurity and data protection are somehow, some way interwoven. So going back to our next speaker, who is representing the CEO and the National Commissioner of Dr. Vincent. We will have a representative from, his name is Mr. Isola. Mr. Isola will be representing Dr. Vincent, the Commissioner. And I wanted to take us back to where Africa, Nigeria has been very active in data governance. So from the Africa Union Data Policy Framework to the Nigerian Data Protection Act, we have seen real progress asserting Africa digital sovereignty. So my question is, how do we make sure that data protection or data policy strategies ensure that Africa's position in cyber diplomacy is in the high ground by using the data policy framework? So just taking further from the Data Protection Act and policy, how do you use those kind of policy to ensure that our positioning in cyber negotiation are in a position that we say we are also co-creator, because we seem to be very matured in the Data Policy Act in the African region. So Mr. Isola, you can have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible enough. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. You are audible, please.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning once again, distinguished guests and the panelists on this session. It's really an honor and a privilege to be on this session on behalf of the National Commissioner of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, who is unavoidably absent due to some other national engagement. He asked me to extend his warm greetings and regards, and also wish the organizers a very successful dialogue. All right, going into the question which was asked regarding the data protection policy and framework and how it has been an enabler in leveling the cyber diplomacy. You know, one good thing about the data protection ecosystem in Africa as it is, you know, from the national laws like the Nigeria Data Protection Act, which was recently passed in 2023, to the continental the blueprints, such as the AU Data Policy Framework and the 2014 Malabo Convention. You know, this has really been a strategic tool in cyber diplomacy by establishing a well-harmonized and sovereign digital economy. And, you know, this has also set the terms in engaging with global powers as well as the big techs, you know, the big organizations. And one good thing about this for Africa, you know, it has really make us or enable us to hold most of these big players accountable in terms of the type of technology that is being thrown into the African market. You know, there are series of angles or highlights which I will direct my discussion on in making us understand how this has enabled Africa to be a bargaining power in the cyber diplomacy. Starting with the area of establishing a regulatory adequacy for global trade. You know, by aligning the frameworks, African nations collectively has created a digital jurisdiction that has considered adequate or trustworthy data transfer, which plays a major role in trade as a major player like that of the EU GDPR that allows the flow of personal data to countries with similar protection standards. Africa has also shifted from being a regulatory weak spot to a desirable and compliant data market. And this has enabled us, you know, to ensure that we hold every players accountable and transparent enough in the usage of the data of Africans at large. And, you know, this forces multinational companies seeking to operate across Africa to comply with Africa standards rather than detecting their own terms, not just seeing Africa as a dump ground for any of their own technology or any of their own means of doing things outside their space. So this has really helped us in shaping and establishing a regulatory adequacy for global trade. The second one is promoting digital sovereignty and collective bargaining. The Nigeria Data Policy Framework, which articulates a national common vision and principle for data governance, you know, prioritize digital sovereignty when it comes to the digital space in Nigeria. And this has also enabled us. This has also enabled us in having the unity to prevent kind of forum shopping by tech companies, where company might choose to base its Africa operations in the country which the weakest data law operates, or probably countries without any data protection law. So in Nigeria, as it is today, it's no longer the usual way of doing things. Such tech companies, the likes of the Meta, Google, and, you know, Microsoft, you know, the big companies must come physical, like they must have a physical office in the country to operate, and whereby we can also negotiate in terms of the data operation and in the manner in which data is being processed in Nigeria. And, you know, the country has gained collective bargaining power to negotiate uniform policies on issues like data localization, mandatory compliance, and secure infrastructure requirements, which is in line with the Nigeria Data Protection Principles, and fair taxation of data-driven services, which has also ensured that the economic value of Nigeria data remains or reside within the country. The next point I will speak to is in the area of influencing global governance norms. You know, by adopting and promoting human rights-centric and development-oriented approach to data protection, as championed by the AU as well, Nigeria has set its unique interests and principles on the global stage, particularly in multilateral forums like the UN. You know, an example is the discussion on the cybercrime and digital cooperation. So in Nigeria, we've moved from being a recipient of global digital norms to an active shaper of them, ensuring that global standards are not solely defined by the interest of the big players or the developed countries like the US, China, or the EU, but also reflects the needs of other developing economies such as Africa, you know, such as Nigeria. And this has really helped in shaping cyber diplomacy. And another area which I would talk about or address is the level of trust and credibility which has been established, you know, by adopting comprehensive and harmonized data protection laws, signals Africa's commitment to global privacy and security standards. And this has brought about trust with major economic blocs, enabling data adequacy arrangements and secure the cross-border data flow. So, you know, quite a whole lot has really been done in that aspect. So touching down to an example, which I believe most of us are familiar with, and the most significant collective example is the AU push for the entry into force and implementation of the 2014 Malabo Convention. You know, the Malabo Convention, which provides a comprehensive legal framework for both cybersecurity and personal data protection. While its ratification has been a long process, the commitment to this framework by the AU has served as a powerful diplomatic tool. You know, during the negotiation with the global technology providers and foreign governments like the US and the Chinese government, Nigeria has easily continued to reference on the Malabo Convention and the subsequent data protection policy framework to demand specific and higher standards when it comes to handling personal data for citizens. The AU data policy framework has really helped harmonize national laws and create single Africa position on data governance. You know, an illustration like this has broadened definition of the cybercrime, expanding it beyond just network securities or to include offenses that threaten political stability, and also respects national sovereignty when it comes to cyber diplomacy. And another aspect is the threat of promise of harmonized, regulated by the 55 states market forces, foreign entities to engage with the continent as a whole, not just as a region. They cannot ignore the privacy concerns in one country while building a data hub in another. But you know, this harmonized framework has brought about ensuring that the region, the Africa as a whole, the big techs or the big companies operate in Africa as a whole, and not just seeing it as, oh, maybe if I'm able to operate in this country, why the data protection law is not adequate enough or not strong enough, then they can easily play smart on them. But this has not been the game since there's been a form of harmonization across the data governance framework in Africa. And this leverage ensures that foreign investments in digital infrastructure, you know, like the establishment of data centers, cloud services, must include provision for local compliance, especially while addressing the job creation, appointing the data protection officers and auditor and lead auditors, and adherence to local legal jurisdiction, which has enabled the boost in Africa's economy and legal control over the digital space. In closing, what I have to say is it's clear that data protection has become a strategic instrument of national power. It is essential to how we defend defend against cyber attacks and espionage and exploitation of our critical national infrastructure, but also how we project influence and earn trust on the global stage. For Africa, harmonized data protection frameworks give us a leverage and resilience on how our citizens, our data is being protected and processed within the stipulated law and guidelines as well as frameworks. And this builds credibility with global partners and negotiation from a position of strength and not just dependency. The real opportunity lies in unity, when African nations align frameworks under the AU data policy framework. And this will enable us to create a powerful voice capable of shaping global digital order. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Isola. You have made it clear that data governance is no longer just a compliance issue. It become a very powerful instrument for diplomacy, sovereignty, and trust, also protecting of our economic aspiration. That brings us to the next layer of our discussion, political oversight and accountability. That you already highlighted how Meta and all that big institution in Africa, they couldn't just get away with things, how Nigeria showcased implementing the frameworks that they are put in place. For that, thank you. For any of these framework, whether it could be cybersecurity or data protection or the global mechanism, Global Digital Compact, the WIS's new commitment under the UN, truly take root in the need a strong political ownership at a national level, because all these discussions are beautiful until we have our political ownership. That means the laws, the legal framework, and the budget to implement those frameworks, and the policies ultimately enabling this require parliamentarian will. So I want to bring back our well-known Honorable Alhaji Mbo. He is a member of Parliament of the Gambia. He is one of us also, our chair for the African IGF MAG members, just to give us insight from a parliamentarian perspective. What role should the MPs play in shaping and overseeing cyber diplomacy commitment? You can also touch upon data policy. How can parliamentarians move beyond the ratification to influencing position and budget and oversight? So if you can highlight budget and oversight, I would appreciate it. So Honorable Alhaji, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Sorin, and thank you very much to all the previous speakers, from my brother Ajibola and Cynthia and everybody else that is on this call this morning. And I would like to say good morning from the Smiling Coast. That's the Gambia. Now, you asked a very pertinent question. That is the role of the parliamentarians, because with all the things that we are doing, the parliamentarians must be at the forefront to ensure there's fruition to what we want across the continent. Now, the role of the parliamentarians in cyber diplomacy actually is multifaceted, because in the first instance, parliamentarians are to ensure that policies that are made for the public interest. And when we talk about the public interest here, we are also talking about the greater good of society. And that's exactly what parliamentarians need to ensure that that's actually happening. Now, we are also aware that data is the economic jewel of the African continent. And we must ensure that we protect it at all levels, at all costs. And in doing so, we are talking about policies, we are talking about laws, and we are also talking about policing the policymaker. policing the regulator at the same time. So it's essentially what Parliament ought to do is to ensure that those regulators, those policymakers, actually, whatever they're trying to do is in line with the best interests of the African continent. And that's exactly where Parliament actually comes into play. Now, because when you look at generally, you will realize that whether it's the health sector, whether it's the agricultural sector, or whether it's the financial sector, data becomes key in all those sectors across the board. Now, we are all aware that maybe data mining or data collections, data protection, really is not really something that the African continent have been really doing very well on. And simply because whatever we do in terms of policy, whatever we do in terms of laws, they are fragmented. Essentially, members of parliament must ensure we try to our best to ensure that we have proper coordination, and we also have harmonization in some of the laws or some of the policies that are actually made. Because at the end of the day, in this digital world, one cannot go without the other. Somebody actually has mentioned it, like data is the soil, and I quite agree with that. But we're also saying that data is the economic jewel of this country, and this soil actually is the economic jewel that we have in this continent. Now, the laws are not harmonized. In fact, we still have countries that actually have not signed the Malabo Protocol, and we also have a lot of countries also on the board that do not have laws relating to the protection of data or on cybersecurity. We still have some issues along those lines. But nonetheless, it is the responsibility of members of parliament to ensure that comes into fruition. Now, at the level of the African Union, we know the Pan-African Parliament is the organ of the African Union. And our responsibility as members of parliament does not involve lawmaking, because countries are yet to ratify the protocol that would give us the full powers to be able to legislate, just like it's done in the European Union, and just like it's been done in our own countries. We are yet to have those powers after almost 20 plus years of existence. So what we do is we create something we call model laws. What are these model laws? The model laws essentially it mimics our national laws. For example, when you look at the Malabo Protocol, for example, on cybersecurity and personal data protection, what our committee, which is the committee on infrastructure, energy, science, and technology, we are planning to embark on model laws that, as we have done in other sectors, in agriculture, in finance, et cetera, et cetera. So we are planning now to embark on a model law. And a model law is a law that would ensure that all countries can rely on to be able to enact or to be able to create their own laws. And then they can personalize it, if I can say, or they can make the laws based on their country's constitutions. So what we are actually trying to do also is to ensure that we actually, members of parliament, we all came from different backgrounds. And when you go to the African Parliament, and in fact, I also realized it's the same thing that also happens at the level of the European Parliament and also on our own country's parliament. We do have a lot of members of parliament that are not afraid with the latest technologies in terms of what needs to be done as a country and how do we protect and how to ensure that we really leverage on technology to move the continent to another level. Now, one of the things we're actually doing right now, we are doing a lot of collaboration with other organs of the African Union, like NEPAD. We are also doing collaboration with the private sector as well, where they will come and have workshops with us, train the MPs for them to understand really what technology actually brings and the role of parliamentarians across the board. Now, recently we have one that we dealt with AI in general, in detail. What is the role of members of parliament as far as the AI is concerned? Now, mind you, we already have the Malabo Protocol. We also have the AU data policy frameworks. We also have the AU AI strategy, among others, that most members of parliament of the African Union do not actually understand. And that's where we had the biggest gap. And to be able to also ensure that this cyber diplomacy is able to get off the ground very well on the continent, we need to understand, we get everybody on board, and also members of parliament must understand that these are the real issues and these are the things that we need to do as a continent to be able to move this diplomacy on another level. Because overall, I think it's important, and we are also aware that collaboration is key. We are also aware that we need to engage everybody at all levels across the continent to ensure, not only in the continent, but also across the continent, to ensure that we are all on the same page. Because at the end of the day, we all need to work together because technology cuts across all sectors, cuts across borders, and that's the reason why we have the borderless wall. But we must be also at the center of all this to ensure that we put this in the right perspective. Now, when you look at what we are doing right now, like I said earlier, capacity building is at the forefront because members of parliament need to understand. And for us to ensure that we have the cyber diplomacy right on track, members of parliament who holds the executive accountable must also understand, because you cannot legislate what you do not know. So capacity building actually is one of the areas that we are doing right now, and also in terms of creating model laws that was actually going to help the continent, where countries actually can pick and be able to create their own laws, etc. Now, the collaboration also with the private sector. The private sector here, we're talking about companies that actually are well-grounded in technology on the continent or across the world. Essentially, we want to work with them to ensure that we bring the goods to the African continent. But above all, our education curriculum. We are aware that sometimes our curriculums are not fit for purpose. And if you look at most countries, the issues of technology, as far as the curriculums are concerned, is really not standard. And that's why we are trying to ensure that we bring all those into play. Now, what can we do together is also to ensure that we look at the education sector at all. We also look at the energy sector. Because in as much as we want to get connectivity, we also want to get meaningful connectivity. So in short, what the parliamentarians are doing is to ensure that we have more collaboration with various government institutions, with various organs of the African Union that have the responsibility to ensure that the technology track for the continent is actually, we are doing it all across the board. But above all, we need to collaborate as a continent to ensure that we understand what we need to do to ensure the policymakers and also the regulators are on track to ensure that we have value for our money. But above all, also, we also need to understand that whatever laws we make or policies, it must be for the greater good of society. Thank you.
Thank you, Alhaji, Honorable Alhaji. Sorry for rushing you. We lost so much time in front, but I just want to do one exercise before we close our session. If all the panelists can put the video on, and I will just want to do one role player just to come up a call for action. As Alhaji said, translating those declaration to the practical implementation one. So Cynthia, if you can come, we can all. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sorina. For me, what I will use as a call for action is simple. We need to really strive to build the infrastructure which must be protected. The data we generate, we must also ensure that it is respected. And the innovation that we create as a continent, it must be nurtured in a secured manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to ask this question before. Let's think that all of you have a chance to meet the UNECA Executive Secretary and the AUC Chair in the same room. And if you are given an opportunity to ask them one action or to commit in one thing, specifically to have a reform, institutional reform tomorrow, to turn Africa's participation into agenda setting power, instead of just a passive participant in cyber diplomacy, what would you like to ask, or what would you like to see? You guys free to ask? They are not here. So be courageous. What do you think is required from this big giant institute at the regional level for us to be harmonized, cooperate, all these lovely words to be translated, because they are in a good position to put us in the right direction. So I'm gonna give Cynthia, then ladies first, then I will give Alhaji Izola, then lastly I'm gonna give Dr. Ajijola. Thank you.
Thank you, Sorin. Again, I think for me, it's simple. Just listen to the Africa voice, you know, because I mean, if we get into this, all countries are afforded the same opportunity, all regions are afforded the same opportunity. So what is important for me, just listen to the Africa voice and make sure that the Africa voice gets reflected in the final product of the negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you. Alhaji? Honorable Alhaji, you are muted. Okay, maybe until
hello.
Yes, please go.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. For me, I think we must nurture and encourage local solutions, and to do that, we must help to build from within, so that we can represent ourselves well. There is no one that could understand us more than ourselves. So for me, it's about building local solutions and encouraging local capacity as well.
Mr. Isola? Hello? Okay, I think maybe he's not with us. Since we don't have much time, I think Ajijola, you can take
Okay.
the floor.
First of all, I would indicate to them that in order to move forward in almost any process, especially the processes we're talking about here, you need three things: people, process, technology. To that end, I would ask them to either develop or apply critical thinking with prioritization. Number two, to actually generate the will to act. And number three, to actually act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think with that, we will conclude our discussion today. Just to ask my colleague, she wants to take a picture of everybody, if I'm not mistaken. If everybody can put their camera on, so we can have a memory of this webinar. Melat?
Yes, we're done. We have done.
You are done? Okay, good. I think I don't want to take much of time. There are so many things which has been said. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. We shortened a very diverse group. It was purposely picked to have a diverse perspective. Cynthia for giving us a very good background on Wizards, where we started back from 1998 when ITU was in lead to make sure that Wizards was come to life. Now today, our whole conversation about cyber diplomacy or digital governance, GDC as you call it, it is a second coming of Wizards or a second phase of Wizards. Then Ajijola opened the whole webinar with a broad perspective of how we should see security, not just from a technical angle, but from what we call data, instead of just labeling it as oil, but we have to label it as soil because it is infinite and we have to cater for it. In the Pan-African non-aggression norms that you put also forward, you require capacity building to make sure that financing of our processes in building our capacity. I cannot name so many of them because you had brilliant idea. Catherine, she left us, but she gave us her perspective, how Africans weren't that much of actively involved. Even the few of countries who have been involved in GGE and opening working group, what was the challenge back then, and what she should a vision of a local value creation, making sure that our data cannot be just extracted, practical cooperation and collaboration in learning from the youth. As she said, Now, capacity building should not be the traditional form. How do we capitalize using the emerging technologies in AI and build our capacity? And Isola also talks about how accountability in turning this policy framework in practical ways, how Nigeria has done it well in the data governance or field. It was excellent covering that angle. Last but not least, our friend Honorable Alhaji Mbo gave us a good perspective of how can legislate things that you are not aware. Capacity building is a very huge deficit in the legislative arms. He talks about PAP, that is another arm of the IUC, how collaboration with AUDA, NEPAD, ISE, all those things are relevant. Translating this framework, declaration, a global framework, be translated at the national level. So his call of model laws and the capacity buildings are highly highlighted. If I missed anything, we will have the recording of this webinar, and I want to go back and to say thank you. This is for tech, but I wouldn't conclude this webinar without acknowledging the Global Network for Cyber Solutions, which is our partner to commemorate the International Cybersecurity Awareness Month and come up with this webinar. So I want to just give a few seconds to Segu, who are part of the organization of this webinar, just to give us a farewell goodbye message.
Okay, thank you, Serena. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alaji, my good friend. Thank you, Mr. Ijola. Thank you, Cynthia. Before we go, I just want to give us a parting advice. Africa, I would take that from the paper delivered by the National Commissioner representative, and that has to be to do with the collective bargaining power. If Africa really have to create an impact, Africa must grow the internal democracy, they must grow the internal economy, and they must enforce their regulations, and they must be able to come together to harmonize their regulations across Africa. If not, I can tell you, we will talk about policy, we will not move forward. On that note, I want to thank you. I'm the president of the Global Network for Cyber Solutions. I've already posted our website. You could please be free to access us. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I can assure you, whatever that is being discussed here, we are going to synthesize it into a framework. We have already started. We don't do webinar or conference anyhow. We do conference because we have an agenda to make things work. And I can promise you it will work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and have a great
Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Bye.